Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our talk about transfer. It takes two community college and university partnerships that help facilitate a successful transfer experience. So I'm going to give it just a few minutes while everybody continues to join, give a chance for the participants to get logged in. And as everybody's joining, I'd like to just remind you, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. This will help us kind of track questions and engage more easily than if we were to use the chat. And while you're signing in, I know Teresa usually likes us to ask, just put in the chat your name and what college you're representing today. Frida, thanks for joining us. Nina, thanks for joining us. I see a lot of names that I don't quite recognize today, but all right. Lena from Lee College, thank you. People are still trickling in. Jamie from Amarillo. It's good to see community college representatives here. Texas A&M, Veronica, welcome. Missy from Sul Ross. That's a little ways away. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce the speakers to you today. Joining us, we have Renee Esparza, who's the Transfer Resources Director at Austin Community College, where she started in 2005. Renee has been a recruiter, advisor, adjunct faculty member, program coordinator, and analyst. She also served on many ACC, university, and statewide committees during her time there. Most recently, Renee is a member of the Texas Transfer Alliance and the Equity Transfer Initiative grant work team, which both aim to improve transfer rates and ease the transfer path ACC students navigate as they progress to earning a bachelor's degree. Renee has a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Texas, a Master's of Arts from Texas State University, and recently earned a postmaster certificate in transfer practice and leadership from the University of North Georgia. Joining us from the university side of the house, we've got Kambra Bolch. She's the Associate Dean in the University College at Texas State University, and she's been there since July 2015, where she supervises the college's academic programs, including the Interdisciplinary Bachelor of General Studies degree program, University Seminar, National Student Exchange, as well as the college's 2 academic advising centers. Kambra works with the university's 9 academic advising centers to provide professional development about general education core curriculum transfer, as well as to resolve core-related transfer questions. She recently served on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board Core Curriculum Study and Report Advisory Committee. That is a mouthful. And currently serves on the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee. Kambra also serves on several transfer partnership work groups and committees, including the Texas Transfer Alliance. Kambra has a Bachelor's of Arts from Texas Tech University, a Doctorate of Jurisprudence from the University of Texas at Austin, and recently completed the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Professional Development course on equitable student success in higher education. That's a lot, y'all. I'm so happy. I'm so happy y'all are joining us. For everybody joining us in the room, you have a wonderful team here that's going to present to you that has a lot of great information to share. I hope that you walk away with some new knowledge. So without further ado, let's get it started.
So good afternoon, everybody. As Marisol said, my name is Renee Esparza. I am the Transfer Resources Director at Austin Community College. And when she came to us and said, we want to do a panel on transfer, I said, we got to do it with Texas State, just to highlight the partnership that we have and what has developed over the last few years. What the first question she asked us, I think, was why transfer? So why do we need to focus on transfer? And as somebody who works at a community college and who works with transfer, I always want to focus and talk about transfer. But when we look at some of the national data, I think it really brings to light why it's important that we really become intentional in the work that we do with transfer students. So there's some national data I want to present. You've probably heard this stat if you've at all read any recent publications or articles about transfer, but what they're presenting is that 80% of students who enter a community college state that they intend to transfer and earn a bachelor's degree. Of those students, only 33% transfer to a four-year institution. And of those students, only 14% complete a bachelor's degree. So there's a lot of things that happen along a student's journey that might take them off the path. And what we want to do is make sure that we are there to support them and get them to that next step. I'm going to go on a little tangent right now, Kambra. When I started getting involved in transfer, there was a lot of focus on what can four-year institutions do to support incoming transfer students to Persist. As somebody who works at a community college, I think it's taken a little bit of extra effort for us to no longer take for granted that students are coming to us just to transfer, and they're going to find a school, they're going to make it. Once they've left our campus, it's out of our hands. If you look at these numbers, the largest gap where students fail to persist happens at the community college. So I think us at the community college do have a responsibility to help students and to kind of build some of that scaffolding. When you look at the numbers, so 451,326 students transferred from a community college to a four-year institution. This is based off of the fall 2014 undergraduate enrollment. It's that cohort that began in fall 2014. And as you know, it takes a while to track these students. And you can look through these numbers, but I think what's the important part here is that 26% of those students who did transfer from a community college to a four-year institution are no longer enrolled and did not earn a degree. So that's 117,000 students that probably took out loans, that spent a lot of time, that did things that impacted their lives, and have nothing at the end of it, right? It's decreased earning potential. They probably had some struggles along the way, like all of us know who've tried to manage school and work or school and other responsibilities. And so when we talk about transfer, we think about these things. What is our student population? How many of them want to transfer? And what are the outcomes of those students? So I'll let Kambra talk a little bit about our specific institutions.
Well, good morning, everyone. As Renee said, when the folks at Trellis approached us, it's funny because I think that both of us had the exact same reaction. When they talked to me, I said, oh, we have to do this with ACC. And so what you'll hear is that we've established a really good working partnership. And so we're excited to talk about that. So as Renee mentioned, what we really want to do is ease these students' journeys. And I know all of you want to do the same thing, and that's why you're here today. Institutionally, I saw that there were a couple of people in the attendee list who are not from Texas, and lots of you are from Texas. So if you're not from Texas in particular, what I want to let you know is from a geography perspective, ACC and Texas State University are located very close to one another. So Texas State is just about 30 miles down the road from Austin. And so we have a very strong geographic situation where we want to facilitate student transfer. So for us as an institution, we're about 38,000 students, and ACC has close to the same number of college credit students. And as you see on that slide, Texas State University is the #1 intended destination for ACC transfer students. 37% of Texas State's fall 2021 undergrads were transfers, and that's about 12,000 students. And of those, 3,000-ish of them in fall 21 were brand new students, and at least a third of those were ACC students. So, and if you look at our data from years previous, in any given year, we have roughly that same number of transfer students, and it has been growing. So what we really want to do is make sure that we're intentional about that partnership. So just from a strictly, and Renee, you could go to the next slide, from a strictly practical situation, our partnership has been very practical for very many years. We've always had a good working relationship based on that geographic proximity. And we've done a number of things. We've always done specific work together where we bring folks from each of our institutions. We've done advising updates, we do transfer planning guides, and we do an annual transfer advisory committee. At least that was pre-pandemic, where we bring people to the institution. But what we have learned over the years is that we could be more intentional about what we do. There have been a number of things that have happened between our two institutions over the year as we've built this partnership. One of them, for example, is a co-enrollment program that we have called the Pathway Program, where students are co-enrolled at both of our institutions simultaneously. And what that did for us is put in focus, because we were each talking with each other's students at the same time. We could hear the challenges and the issues that they were going through. And so for whatever reason, until we had that partnership program, I think we were not as in tune with what our students were encountering as they navigated the landscape of those two different institutions. And so that's one of the things that I think really put a spotlight and a focus on how we could be more intentional. The creation of ACC's Transfer Resources Department, specifically putting Renee as the person in charge of that, has really provided that focused point of contact for us to be able to pinpoint the efforts that we are undertaking. And so one of the things you'll hear throughout this presentation, I think, is that the human relationships between the people who are at the institutions are a key to making things as successful as they can be. So Renee and I see each other frequently. We are in meetings all the time together, and that has been one of the strongest building blocks, I would say. We're going to talk about the practical things that we've done as well, but I want to underscore how important I believe, and I think Renee would agree, the human element of our partnership is the secret sauce that makes it work. Renee?
I'm going. Sorry.
No, you're ready.
My PowerPoint slides. So as Kambra mentioned, I think I really love the way she put it. We had a partnership of practicality. We look at the numbers and say, ACC sends more students to Texas State, and Texas State accepts more ACC students than any other community college. And we just kind of said, that's great. But what we realized and what we weren't really looking at, I think, as institutions was how challenging is it for the students to get there? Could there be more? How can we improve this pathway? And so with the creation of my role, I think it provided our staff more time to actually seek out opportunities to learn from others. And so there were 3 different opportunities that have come up in the last few years that I think have really helped us formalize the way that we work together as institutions. The first one is the Texas Transfer Alliance, and I have some links. I'm going to see if I can put them in the chat box for these 3 different programs. I can make this work. The Texas Transfer Alliance was the first one that we really got involved with. And actually, Marisol, I'm going to put them in the host and panelist chat. Maybe you can, never mind, I figured it out. That was the first one that kind of got everybody at the table. And I will tell you from my personal perspective, as kind of like the newer person leading this department, it gave me the opportunity to talk with people like our provost, who I had never talked to before, to be able to get some ideas and get institutional backing from our Vice Chancellor of Instruction, our Vice Chancellor of Transfer Programming. It allowed us to kind of look at everything that was going on around the college and put the pieces together to see how we could work collaboratively instead of in silos. So Texas Transfer Alliance came about, and through this program, it was originally a 1-year program, and we had a coach. We had somebody who kept us in line. had us setting goals, had us laying out who was responsible for what. And she would set our monthly meetings, and every meeting, it was like, where are you in terms of, this idea? What has happened here? And so that really kept us on target, and I think pushed us to be a little bit more proactive in how we approach things versus just kind of letting things slowly develop and build. As that partnership or that 1-year program kind of came to a close, the opportunity for the Equity Transfer Initiative came up. And this was something through the American Association of Community College. And this was part of a nationwide initiative that was about catalyzing transfer and equity and improving outcomes for students. And what they were looking for were partnerships across the nation that would work together specifically not only to improve transfer, but improve transfer for underserved populations. And so it was really nice because when we applied for it, we got to say, here's everything that we've worked on, here's what we want to keep working on, and here's what we think the outcomes will be. So we got accepted to that program. And at the same time, they extended our Texas Transfer Alliance grant. They said, let's go 1 more year. Y'all are doing a great job. And so again, we kept on with those formal monthly meetings to check in, to set those short-term and longer-term goals. And then finally, what's recently begun is we were accepted to be part of the Aspen AASCU Transfer Intensive Program. And what the goal of this program is, it is a 1-year program, but the intent is to create a bold transfer vision for our partnerships. And what is a little bit different, in my opinion, from this one, is this one involves our presidents. Our presidents have to be part of these conversations. They are going to hear from all of us that have been doing the work so that they can also help formalize and really create that foundation of transfer support at both of our institutions. But really what these 3 different partnerships have done is just formalize it, make sure that everybody who needs to be at the table can be there, and really helped us focus these efforts. And so these exist, but in addition, we also, both of our institutions are doing a lot of things to support students. So here at ACC, outside of these programs, I want to talk about what we do to make sure that our students are transferring successfully. And I think one of the most important things is making sure that our curriculum aligns with the degree plans of some of our high rate transfer institutions. Here in Central Texas, we have Texas State 30 miles down the road, but also close to us, we have the University of Texas at Austin. And so those are the 2 institutions that most of our students express interest in, although our students do transfer all over the nation. But what we started to realize is, hey, if a student wants to transfer in business and they want to go to UT, they have to take this math class. But if they want to go to Texas State, they need to take this other math class. So we started having what are called faculty to faculty conversations, where our Department of Articulation and University Relations would pull together faculty from the 3 institutions and other partner institutions in the area to talk about, what is it that we're really looking for in a business degree? What can ACC offer to in our degree plan? What can we include on our program maps that specify if you want to go to Texas State, you need to take this class? Or can we convince some of these universities to rethink, what are the actual learning objectives or learning outcomes that are needed? And so that we could all look at our degree plans to see how it could be more seamless of a transfer for our students. On the student affairs side, we realized we needed to provide more of a holistic support system for our students at transfer, right? It's not just getting them from one institution to another, it's making sure that they're prepared, making sure that they know things like, when is the deadline for scholarships? When do I need to make sure that my transcripts are in? How do I even order my transcripts? And so we've re-envisioned the transfer workshops we offer, where we have some from the very beginning. We call this a smart start to a bachelor's degree workshop. It talks about, how do you pick your major? How do you explore career fields? How do you know you need to transfer? When is the right time to transfer? What do I talk about with my advisor when I'm planning my transfer? So tips like that. And then we have workshops that maybe suit a student depending on where they are in the journey, developing that holistic transfer application for competitive institutions. How to write a transfer essay. What are the things that you need to highlight so that you are more of a competitive candidate for transfer admission? Out of the Texas Transfer Alliance, one of the things that we created was something called Transfer 101, which is not a course, but it comes up as a course in our Blackboard platform where students can join this course that's free. It doesn't have any homework or assignments, but they can find all of the transfer resources that they might need. So if a student's in there and they're like, how do I pay for transfer? How do I fill out my transfer application? What does it mean by course number when I'm filling out my Apply Texas or Coalition or Common application? That information is listed in there. So students can access that for free 24/7. There's also a discussion board. And we've seen students write like, hey, I want to transfer to Texas State of Nursing. Anybody else doing that? Let's get together and talk. So it's a way to start that community building. So students don't feel alone as they're trying to navigate this process. With the creation of the Transfer Resources Department, we were able to create some transfer specialist positions. These are individuals who are not advisors. They supplement the work that our advisors do by helping students with their essays, helping students fill out that application process, and doing a lot of transfer exploration. Because as we do want our students to transfer, and for a lot of our students, it's the convenience of where is that school located. We also want to make sure that we are exploring all the options available to them and making sure that they find the right fit for them. When we started this program, I think our first semester we had we didn't really advertise, we had about 300 students requesting appointments. We're getting to the point where we're having about 3,000 appointments requested a year, and we have a very small team. But I will tell you that the majority of those transfer application or transfer appointment requests are for exploration. There's a lot of students that are now starting to think about like, hey, I want to find programs that are best for accounting. And so I think the way that we're talking about transfer has impacted the culture of transfer on our institution, and we're seeing that impact in students. And then, of course, we want to make sure that our students are connecting with universities. We have universities on our campus. Pre-COVID, we did, and we're starting to allow visits again soon. And they can come for just recruiting or to do on-campus advising. But one of the most exciting things I think has been our tours. We will take students to university campuses so that they can experience what it feels like on that campus. And as many of you all know, charter buses, travel for a day, it's expensive. Sometimes it's hard for our students to take a couple hours out of their day to do it. So what we'll do is we'll do it on a Friday, and we will go to 2 schools a day, a small private and a large public. And the reason for that is we want students to get the feel for the campus. We want students to be able to see like, hey, the buildings at Texas State are really far away and I'm not used to this. Or, oh my goodness, look at all this like excitement and like all this hustle and bustle on campus. This is where I want to be. So it's really an opportunity for our students to actually visit a university campus. And sometimes we do things like mock classes, or we'll have lunch in the food court area. And it's a really fun experience for students. But I put our website on here so you can learn more. Texas State, I think, has made wonderful strides in what they're doing for transfer students. So I'll let Kambra talk about that next.
So as a large institution, as Renee said, that sometimes can be a real shock to students who are looking at transfer. So that I think is one of the best things that has happened is that students are able to come and visit. And we do have some visit programs that are specific that we do at Texas State that I'll mention as well. So undergraduate admissions, of course, is a very important stakeholder in the transfer process to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language. And our undergraduate admissions folks do a really good job of working to partner with other entities on the campus so that if they are getting questions that are not theirs to answer, they're doing a good job of parceling those out. So I think one of the challenges that transfer students have when they're moving to an institution as large as Texas State is that it can be easy to get lost in the shuffle. So making sure that everyone who is engaged in the transfer process knows everyone else and knows how the processes work is a very important part of what we've gotten better at over the years. So our undergraduate admissions office in particular, they will often do on-the-spot transcript evaluations. They have a set of admissions counselors that are experts in transfer as well. And when those counselors are not quite sure about how something might transfer for a specific student, they also have relationships with our advising centers. So they'll refer those questions or they'll ask the question on behalf of the student. We offer a number of visit day programs for transfer students where those on-the-spot transcript evaluations are built in as part of the process. And of course, all of that kind of came to a halt with COVID, but hopefully that will come back again. Admissions will also do campus visits to ACC campuses to do those on-the-spot evaluations. And then for those in Texas, reverse transfer is one of those things that our admissions folks monitor. So when a student has actually completed the requirements for that associate's degree, we have a process to make sure that the student ends up being awarded that credential because we think that is very important. We also have big visit days. Our premier visit day is called Bobcat Days, and it is kind of a giant fair on our campus. We've got one coming up on Saturday. So if any of you have students that want to come and visit, we would welcome them. But those transfer visit days or those specific Bobcat Days have a transfer track associated with them as well. So there are freshman specific tracks and presentations, and then there is an opportunity for students to have their transfer questions answered, to meet with the transfer admissions counselor. They can talk with the program of their choice, and then there are ways for them to go get very specific transfer information because, as we all know, one of the challenges with transfer is each student can be very different in where they are. And so we feel like it's important for us to make sure that all of our programming includes that transfer aspect. Our advising centers are key to what we do for incoming transfer students. And in the last couple of months, we've actually hosted some programming with our transfer opportunities with advising. So ACC hosted a transfer day. This was during transfer week. And our advising centers all, because we're not yet able to visit and do fairs in the same way, we did Zoom drop-in for any student who had specific advising questions. So they were able to receive direct advising. And I suspect that some of those great technology advancements that we have been required to implement during COVID are going to be a boon for our transfer students in the future. Texas State Advising Centers often go out to various ACC campuses as well and will both offer tabling events just for information, but also that direct advising. Other things that Texas State does, and this next one, transfer-specific scholarships. It took a long time to get to this place, but we now offer transfer-specific scholarships for students, both competitive ones, but assured admission scholarships. So we are excited about this because this has taken us a long time to get to this place. We had focused more heavily on freshman scholarships, freshman merit scholarships, and now we're able to offer those guaranteed scholarships. And they range up to $8,000, so $4,000 a year for up to 2 years. And then there are other amounts, $6,000, $4,000, and $2,000. So that's a big improvement for us, and that will be implemented for the fall of 2022. So I'm thinking that once word of mouth gets out, that's going to be a big deal in terms of how we're able to attract our transfer transfer students. And then last there on the slide, we have a number of transfer navigation and agreement opportunities. I specifically want to mention we have a couple of Title III grants that have been instrumental in helping us get transfer navigation off the ground. Our Project Maestros grant, it specifically services pre-service teachers that are transferring from community colleges, and that grant offered the opportunity for us to create a transfer navigator position. And so that has paved the way for us to be able to work very specifically with certain populations and has strengthened the relationships between the College of Education and their counterparts at ACC. It has dramatically increased the communication. And our transfer navigator has really taken the approach of not just focusing on those specific populations. She's created, in the same way that ACC created their Transfer 101 course, she created a Canvas site with all of our transfer resources and puts announcements out periodically that would be of interest to transfer students. So our next grant is just starting, and that's Hinoresion Stem. And it is another Title III grant that is specific to promoting Hispanic and low-income student success through a number of avenues: individual support, transfer navigation, and STEM career preparation. But what we are working through with this new grant is to really enhance the transfer navigation services. So even though the grant is specific to STEM, the transfer navigation services that will be offered will be across the board. And so we've recently been able to post a transfer director position, a director of transfer initiatives. So we're super excited about that. And then the next position that will come will be another transfer navigator. So the synergy that's created from those grants, we're working to institutionalize those things. So we've already laid some good groundwork with transfer navigation. And so we're pretty excited that we've been able to make that progress. So if any of you at your institutions have the ability to think about upcoming Title III opportunities, you may want to talk to your folks on your campuses about things that you might be able to write into your grant that would be specific to transfer.
Kambra, I have to tell you, and I tell everybody on here, that when the Assured Transfer Scholarships got announced and I sent it out to our advisors, I got so many responses of woohoo and yay, how exciting. So we're really grateful for that. Thank you for the efforts that you put into making that happen. Through that Texas Transfer, or through the Equity Transfer Initiative, one of the things that we were tasked with was, how do we improve the transfer outcomes for some of our underserved populations? And so what we decided to do was come up with a formal program. And we decided to call it Future Cats, since Texas State are the Bobcats. And it's a cute acronym connecting ACC and Texas State. And really what this is just a way to kind of market our services and make sure that students who are part of the Future Cats program get that targeted outreach to know about the resources that are out there. This has been, of course, impacted by COVID. I will tell you, we haven't been able to do a lot of the things in person that we wanted to. We haven't been able to take our students to the Texas State campus, but we've been able to do a lot of those virtual events. That Kambra made a comment. She said, we're going to keep a lot of this stuff. And one thing I do want to point out is, with the virtual events, it's been great for a lot of our non-traditional transfer students. And because ACC is 11 campuses stretched out across our service area, I think that we have 2 campuses that are 50 miles away from one another. And if you're at all familiar with Austin traffic, it's impossible to have an event at one campus and expect everybody from across the district to get there. So we'll keep a lot of that virtual programming because it's just been so helpful. But we've been able to do some of that specific Future Cats programming for these students. I want to highlight a few things. Texas State has a program called the Common Experience. That's correct, right? Kambra, that's the right name. And every year at Texas State, they have a theme, they have a book, they have programming that is surrounded by this experience. And it's the common experience. So everybody at Texas State goes through this together and gets to connect in that way. And so what they've done is they expanded it to include our future CAT students. So our students who are at ACC that know they want to go to Texas State start to get that sense of belonging. They start to feel connected to the university. And through that program this year, our students were able to get a copy of the book that was selected for the common experience. They were able to participate in some of the virtual lectures that took place on the Texas State campus. And it's kind of brought awareness, I think, to some of the other departments at Texas State. A great example of that is the First Gen group at Texas State reached out to us when they had the opportunity to stream Michelle Obama's speech at Howard University. It was specific for them, and they said, you know what, we have first generation students who will be Bobcats who are at ACC. So let's open this up for a handful of ACC students. And they provided us books. We were able to stream the session. We had some in person, but we were able to give the viewing link to our students too. And we got such great feedback because that's not an opportunity these students would have gotten to experience. And so we're really grateful for that. We've been doing transfer student panels. So students who have successfully transferred from ACC to Texas State will host a panel, and they'll answer students' questions about their experience. You know, what is the advice that they give current ACC students that might make this process a little more seamless or easier? Who are the people they should talk to at Texas State? You know, once they get on campus, where are the places to eat? You know, it's those little questions that we can give the advice, but a student's really going to value it a little bit more, hearing from somebody who's gone through that experience. And so our Future Cats program, you know, we're hoping to increase the amount of activities starting this fall, as long as COVID numbers stay down. But we have shirts designed that have both of our mascots. And in the back, it's going to say ACC to Texas State. But it's really just a way to get students feeling connected to that 4-year now, so that hopefully they kind of stay on the path. So through this whole process, we have some recommendations. I don't know if Kambra wants to get started on this.
Sure, I'll take a stab. And I think this is where you and I both, we want to share what we've learned. Formalizing the partnerships where possible is the thing that we would say. I'm guessing almost everyone has great partners that they're already working with, but if you can pick some places where you can really formalize your partnerships, we would highly recommend that. If you're not blessed to have particular folks with titles that have the word transfer in them, figure out who can do that work and make sure that they have been tapped on the shoulder to do that work. One of the things that Renee mentioned in the earlier slide when we talked about the Texas Transfer Alliance is one of the values of that work was there was a coach who kept everybody on track. And we know that everybody isn't going to be able to be part of a program like that. But if you can take that model and essentially keep a project manager as your point person to follow some of those things, like 90-day planning cycles, for example. If you set those smaller goals and make sure that someone is sort of keeping everyone on track, I think one of the challenges that I see the most is my regular work gets in the way of all those things that I know I want to do. But if I have somebody that's sort of reminding me, hey, we have a meeting in a week. We're going to have we need to have an update, or we're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks. We'd like to have an update. That helps prompt me that, with my good intentions, I actually need to have follow through with that as well. And so that's very practical, but something that I think both of us have appreciated with the experiences that we've had with the coaching. One thing I would also mention that Renee talked about that ACC has been very deliberate about is bringing faculty together. So the faculty conversations, if you have areas, pinch points for transfer where your students or your faculty have not been involved in conversations, faculty don't always understand the logistics related to transfer and what are the things that can get in the way. So getting those faculty in the room and talk about their learning outcomes and what they think students need when they transfer to that four-year institution, for example, making sure they're on the same page has been huge for us in terms of getting past some of the pinch points. Why do we require that specific math class? Or how does that work exactly? What do we think the learning outcomes need to be? So that's gone a long way toward helping us develop program maps and taken some of the pain out of some of the transfer process.
I'll add a few more things to that. I know we have on here to seek out opportunities to learn from national and state leaders, but I would also add work with other institutions. This isn't a competition, right? We're all here with the same goal of helping students succeed. We want to make sure that our students aren't left without a degree and years of debt. We want to make sure that we're helping everyone. There's a reason all of us are in higher ed, and I think it's usually student focused. So work with your partners. If there is something working well at your institution, share with others. If you see, like, if you want to talk to us, like, hey, tell us more about your transfer navigators, we're happy to help. One of the things I saw a few people from community colleges here, and I know that this is also impacting four-year institutions, but we recognize enrollment is down across the board everywhere right now. And one of the things I've struggled with is institutional focus on enrollment and recruiting, and maybe transfer doesn't necessarily help that because it means we'll be losing students. It might mean we might lose some students that don't graduate before they transfer. They might reverse transfer. But one of the things I mentioned in a meeting the other day is successful transfer is, I think, one of the most positive marketing tools that a community college could use, right? If you hear the stories about, oh, I went to a community college, all my credits transferred, I graduated, it was a wonderful experience. That's a marketing and recruitment tool. It's when you hear those negative stories, when that person goes to the newspaper and says, I took all these classes and none of them transferred and it was a waste of my time. That's not good. So I try to remind people that our student success is a way to recruit and to increase recruitment and enrollment. Because I think sometimes we're very short-sighted in what we look at, right? We're looking at numbers, but it's thinking about that longer-term vision and the reputation of our institutions. The last thing I would say is always listen for students' perspective. What are students asking for? Opening our appointment requests, like for the transfer appointments with our specialists, one of the questions is, what do you need help with? And then we have like an open end. We have some options, and then we have an open-ended part. And that's where you start to see the trends, right? That's when we realized there are hundreds of students that don't know how to write a transfer essay and want guidance. So let's create a workshop on that. Hey, at this point of the semester is when we have a bunch of students talking about scholarship search. So this is how we can better strategically plan to help those students and to make it more efficient of a process for them. So I would say listen to students, collaborate, and remember that we're all here for student success. Anything else to add to that, Kambra?
No, I think that sums it up. But again, I'm guessing you all can tell we like working with each other, and that has been a real joy. So the more that we work on these partnerships, the more we learn, the better we are able to serve our students. So that's been one of the most exciting things to see, how we've been able to help our students with all the intentionality that has come about recently, but it's been in progress for a long time. And so we appreciate ACC's partnership very much.
Texas State.
So much love in the room. Thank you so much for sharing. When we had the idea to reach out to do this webinar, to host this webinar, I knew that, reaching out to ACC and Texas State was going to be impactful and have a lot of information. But I have to be honest, I was not even aware of how much the partnership has grown. Just, I was at ACC in 2012. So just from that time period to now, so in 10 years, this has been a dramatic change and strengthening of the partnership. And I really love how y'all gave us some really key recommendations to walk away with and highlighted the importance of really focusing on the partnership and bringing faculty into those conversations about courses. I think sometimes that's one of the most difficult things to approach, is having those conversations with faculty and, telling faculty to really think about their programs and what classes are needed and how we can get aligned. As a former transfer student myself, who did not have this type of support at my institution, I can really see how this would benefit students. And then the increasing financial support that's been available is tremendous. So thank you so much for sharing. And again, for all of you joining us, this is an example of a Texas partnership, but that everything that was shared today doesn't necessarily mean that it only applies to Texas schools, right? We've gotten some really key information to walk away with on how you can strengthen your partnerships with your regional community colleges and universities to make it work and make transfer a little more seamless for your students. And I really love how Renee shared, the success of a transfer student is really the success of an institution. And that serves to open the doors and let students know that they can find success at your institution. And when there's partnerships like this and students can really visualize the whole journey, I think that that's really important. I don't see any questions coming in on the Q&A. So at this point, I'll just say thank you to everybody for taking an hour or so out of your time to join us. And Kambra and Renee, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and being open to this experience with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We enjoyed it.
Awesome. I learned a lot. So thanks, everybody. Y'all enjoy the rest of your day.